at the same time, we have to balance the importance of the what we call the pre-war market, which are the AARP, the older population who are living longer, and it's the largest demographic in America, is the retirement crowd. They have more time on their hands. They are all their children are, for the most part, are out of the house. They're looking for things to do, and they want to be social. So we have to find ways to reach them and the new markets and find ways to blend them together. I think that Facebook is more successful with now the older market than it was even 5 years ago. Instagram and Snapchat are becoming increasingly important. Right now, I think Instagram really is. WeChat is enormously important with the Asian community. It's a tremendously successful way of marketing and reaching out to that community.
Knobloch's Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production and social media. Hey knowers, welcome to our podcast. We are Knobloch's Dance, a social media-based company. We strive to say no to the box. We connect interdisciplinary art, technology, and artists to re-envision the process of art making and sharing.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Marthea of Dance Behind the Screen podcast, and I'm here at the AT&T Performing Arts Center offices with Charles Santos, the executive and artistic director of TITAS Presents. Described as a dance visionary in the Austin Chronicle, Charles Santos has had a distinguished career, first as a dancer for over 10 years in Austin, Texas, then in arts administration and production in both Austin and New York City. In 2001, he was recruited to Dallas to take over as executive director of TITAS Presents. TITAS, the Texas International Theatrical Arts Society, is a vital leader in the North Texas cultural landscape, fostering and facilitating creative partnerships that build a stronger and more collaborative community. TITAS is thriving in the Dallas Arts District and continues to be an important catalyst for innovation in the global dance community. Over the past 18 years, Charles Santos has expanded the organization's roles as the premier presenter of dance and music attractions in Dallas. Now in partnership with the AT&T Performing Arts Center, TITAS is one of the few dance-only presenters in the United States and has expanded TITAS's and the city's international reputation. He continues to serve on multiple boards nationally and locally, receive multiple accolades for achievement in the field and in the community. He regularly works in the Texas Commission of the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as consulting for various offices of cultural affairs and performing arts centers. Since becoming both the executive and artistic director of TITAS Presents, North Texans have been able to experience the world's finest performing artists such as Kid Pivot, Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company, Twyla Tharp, Pilobolus, and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, just to name a few. From trips to Israel, Russia, Canada, and New York City, Charles, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Could you tell us more about what your job is?
Sure. So I'm a big believer in the practice of curation. So we don't just book someone to book a date or because their numbers may be good. We want to look at the whole picture of a season and make sure that we're giving audiences always great dance companies, but we want to push them a little, make them a little uncomfortable with some shows so that we expand their exposure. We want to show them international works. And we want to give them some, crowd pleasers in the mix. I'm not a believer in just putting butts in seats as a philosophy of a lot of presenters. I want to curate and build an audience. So we're always trying to push the envelope a little bit. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing is research. These trips that I get invited on are from consulates or companies or organizations around the United States or in foreign countries. They want us to see their company, so they bring us out and we go and look at these works and start establishing those relationships. They don't just happen. And tours are complicated, especially the international ones. So these trips are about putting all that together.
And I noticed I was doing some research, and in some of your previous interviews, you talked about how it's important to you to actually see the work before you bring it to North Texas. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. It's one of those things. How many times fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It's that kind of mentality where you have you have a company and they say you hear that particular work is really great, and I know this choreographer, and then the work comes and it's not a great work. It was a mistake to bring, and I've made that mistake just one too many times for myself. So I really will not bring a work with very few exceptions. I will not bring a work that I have not physically seen. You have to really pay attention to video to make sure that you're looking at it from a three-dimensional perspective, because video flattens out everything. And you just need to really evaluate as you watch a video. If it's not possible to see the work live and you're watching a full video, you have to really think about how's it going to sit in your theater. Does this need the 2,200 seat Opera House, or does this need the 750 seat Moody? Is it too big or too small for either one? Is this going to appeal to the audience? Is it too jarring? Is it too boring? Is it too exciting? You have to evaluate what it is. And so I try to see everything live. And if I can't see it live, then I have to see an unedited full length video. And I tell them it doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, I'm fully capable of evaluating work, but I need to see it all without edits, because the audience won't see it edited. So that's the task.
You are listening to Navvox Dance.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that from my experience, especially being in grad school and come back local to the North Texas community, we've received such a, I guess, diverse, if you will,
sure.
Presentation of works. And it's been really exciting. Could you talk about the influence of social media, specifically in this curation process? Do you, after you see a company or a company that you're interested in bringing here, do you then go on and check out their Instagram or their Facebook? Or are you interested in their following? Or could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, before I do that, an add-on to your previous question, a really good example of why you have to see work live. I just got back in the fall. I was on an Asia tour, and I was in Seoul at a festival. I was invited to speak and to see work, and I saw 25 companies. And one of the things I realized, they asked me when I arrived in a speech what I was looking for, and I said, I'm looking for the modern voice of Asia. When I left, I ended up saying, that's not what I want. I want to see a company who's based in traditional movement that brings the history of the culture to our country, to Dallas, but is presented in a modern aesthetic, a new way. So I want to push it forward, but I want to do that. And one of the things I saw in many of the works that I saw in Korea was a very meditative, repetitive process in the work, which can be unsuccessful in our country. The attention span tends to be a little bit shorter here in America. And so we talked about adjusting the work without hurting the work for the American market so that it would be more successful, because we want them to be successful. And I would not have experienced that as viscerally if I had not been in the theater seeing the work live. So that's another real reason, is you just have to evaluate all the perspectives of the work. And in terms of social media has become, it's almost a daily increase of importance in the field on so many levels. One is building new audiences. The millennial centennial market of ticket buyers buy their tickets very differently than my generation. I'm a baby boomer. And so the role of that is important. We use it a lot for research. We use it a lot for last minute ticket sales. We find it in particular with the millennial market, it's a more last minute purchase. So having the companies come in and do a social media takeover, we do a lot of now. And the dancers all love to do it. And they take over the accounts, and it builds that relationship. At the same time, we have to balance the importance of the, what we call the pre-war market, which are the AARP, the older population who are living longer. And it's the largest demographic in America is the, retirement crowd. They have more time on their hands. They are all their children are, for the most part, are out of the house. They're looking for things to do, and they want to be social. So we have to find ways to reach them and the new markets and find ways to blend them together. I think that Facebook is more successful with now the older market than it was even 5 years ago. Instagram and Snapchat are becoming increasingly important. Right now, I think Instagram really is. WeChat is enormously important with the Asian community. It's a tremendously successful way of marketing and reaching out to that community. And what I've been stressing, TITAS is a separate organization from the AT&T Performing Arts Center, but they do our marketing. So we've been talking a lot about the importance of reaching everybody for everything. Just because we're bringing in a company from China doesn't mean that we only market to the Asian population, which is very large here. We want everybody to blend and see all the works, whether it's Pilobolus or Momix or, Beijing Dance Theater or the companies that I've got coming next year from Asia. So social media every year is becoming more and more a part of the marketing campaign and strategy in new ways.
And what's your role in that?
My role with them is making sure that they're saying the right things, using the right images. I want to use this image more because it's more reflective of the piece that's coming, or I want to, this one shows more motion. These are the wrong words to use. If they are insisting on using a certain set of vocabulary, then justify to me why we need to do that.
Could you talk more about what you define as the right image or the right text to describe?
Yeah, sometimes when we're getting ready, like right now, this time of year, we're collecting what we call the assets from all the companies for next year's season. We're getting all the word copy of everything that describes the company, their bios, their press quotes. If they don't have press quotes, we're going out on the internet and we're grabbing them ourselves. For a lot of these companies, I know exactly which pieces are coming. So we want pictures that relate to those images. And sometimes the rep changes before that gets here. So we're making sure that the images that are being presented are reflective of it. Like I try not to use a lot of solo images if the piece that was being shown by a particular company is a big group piece and it's full of activity. With a company like Diavolo from the West Coast that we have such a great history with, they're known for their acrobatics flying through the air off of these apparatuses. So we want images to show that. I don't want an image of them running around on the stage. I want them flying through the air.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
So what do you think, I guess, in your experience going all over the world to all these different places, different conferences, what do you think is the emerging influence, if you will, of social media in relationship to the dance world?
It's immediate access. I'm finding that people are on my trips. I post as much as I can, usually through Facebook, but I'm trying to switch it to Instagram. It's people are following and getting more information. They're becoming more informed much more quickly than they might be in the past because you can get immediate information. I can be like, I just got back last night from New York and Vancouver at this festival to see the premiere of an important new work.
I was following your pictures on Facebook.
And it was, I'm also careful when I'm traveling. If I see something bad, I don't usually write anything about it because it is immediate access on a global scale. So I have followers on Facebook that are from companies from around the world that we're doing work with, and I want to be fair to them. What may not work for me for TITAS may be great for someone else's festival. We can't do a lot of small works. Solos aren't as successful on these big stages that we have. So I'm looking for a bigger scale work. But when I was in Vancouver, I saw, Crystal Pite's new work, Reviser, is a work of genius. She is, if you know who Pina Bausch is, Pina Bausch was, she's iconic. So she's an enormously important choreographer from Germany who passed away, and her company is still touring, and they do these massive theater dance works that are just absolute genius. There's a great film called Pina, Pina, that is worth seeing. It's been done in 3D, but it's just a brilliant film about her. Crystal Pite is the Pina Bausch of our generation. She is the new, unbelievably talented voice that is bridging the voice of movement and the voice of, with Jonathan Young of theater, and creating these performance experiences that are unbelievably sophisticated and interesting. No one's doing the work that she's doing.
So what are some, I guess, processes that you have for staying connected to these companies or people with their work? Are you mainly through the digital space or?
Part of it is I've become addicted to a program called Evernote. It's a web-based, there's OneNote, there's a lot of them out there, but I started using Evernote, and I take my iPad everywhere. And it's great because it's, it's cloud-based. And so I can access everything that I work on in Evernote on all my apparatuses. So when I'm in, like when I was in Korea, seeing 25 companies in 7 days, it's a lot of information, and I'm meeting with a lot of people. So generally when when I'm traveling, doing this kind of stuff, I go to a coffee shop, and I usually try to, I will admit I'm a big Starbucks person in this country, but when I'm abroad, I try to go, something that's more interesting. And I will sit there and I write notes for the day. Okay, today I saw Chengmu in South Korea. Here's what I liked about it. Here's my concerns. Got to talk to, the agent is so-and-so. I need to follow up. Definitely want this company. This is Daegu City from Contemporary Dance. Fantastic company. I need to wait on them for this reason. And, and I write notes every day that I travel.
You are listening to Navvox Dance.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a really clear process for
I have a process.
Yeah, for collecting and archiving all of this information. So what happens after that?
Then you start contacting people. There are booking conferences that happen all over the world. Some of these, there's one that's about to happen. I'm traveled out right now. So I'm trying to, not do any more. I'm booked for next year, so I don't need to go anywhere. But there are booking conferences. The biggest one in America is called APAP, Association of Performing Arts, Professionals. Then there's Western Arts Alliance. There's Mid-America. There's several ones. There's, there's Cinars that happens every other year in Montreal that I go to. There's the PAM Arts that's in Korea for Korean artists. There's Mass Arts in Australia. There's a bunch of them. And you just have to go and you have to make deals and see work. And we start contacting who's got an agent, who doesn't, who's repping, who's doing the North American tours. And you just work it out. You start just figure, I generally will go to the complication for us, is the calendar. Some theaters get their dates way, way early. We get them way, way late. So by the time I'm going to the booking conference in January, I'm just getting the dates for the next year. Most of us like to book two years out. I'm booking, 9 months out. That's when I get the dates. So when I go to APAP, people don't understand that, you're not just like leisurely going from show to show. I start breakfast meetings at 7 a.m. I usually get back to the hotel at midnight or 1, with very few breaks. So I will give each, there was one day we had, 9 straight meetings with agents back to back at 1, 1:30, 2, 2:30, 3, 3:30. And in between all of it, you're running to different venues to see showcases of works. And you're making deals on the fly, so I've got a calendar of available dates. And I've got a list I'm meeting with each agent, and they talk about who they have and what they want. What are the tour periods? When are they available? When are they in our country? What are their needs? All this kind of stuff. And then I go see the work, and then I start laying out a map of who I want. There's like the top 20 that I want to present, and I will it down to 10 companies for the year, and try to keep it interesting. A balance of TITAS favorites and new companies and new countries, contemporary work, contemporary ballet works, really off the chart, crazy works, stuff like that. So it's a balance game every year.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
Well, what surprised me about how some people were just oblivious to how really difficult it is to be an artist in some countries. This woman in Egypt was talking about life and death kind of situations that were happening for some of their artists, where this other person who was in Canada said you should demand funding. You're owed it. That mentality doesn't work on a global perspective. It's like Americans who go abroad and they do something wrong and they get thrown in jail and they say, you can't do this. I'm an American. You're not an American. This isn't your country. You have to be a global citizen when you go out there, and you have to go to these conferences with a really open mind that some people are dealing with things that are so radically different than what we deal with in this country. it was very interesting to hear what's going on in some of these countries, some of the absolute life and death challenges that they have with their arts. Mm. We had a great discussion this past year with this woman who she was trans, mm-hmm. and the life that she lived in her country, the death threats and the stuff that's gone. It's just been. She's a director, theater director. And it was really interesting just listening to the experience inside conversations about other things. There's a lot going on a global scale, and it's really rewarding to be a part of an international community and to have a real sharing of ideas. And they also do these big pitches. At ISPA, there are 10 pitches of 10 international projects that are in development. And one of them I'm latched onto now. This will be the third one that I've latched onto, but there was a pitch done for an incredible collaboration that's happening in Mexico between artists from Mexico City and artists from Guadalajara. Mm. And it's an incredible work that I will be bringing to Dallas, not in 1920, but 2021 when it's available. Mm. That is amazing. And beyond the artistic, extraordinary visual aspect of this, the collaboration behind it is so interesting.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
I kind of want to go back to this idea, circle back to this idea of the global citizen that you're speaking about. And I'm just curious, what do you think are, I guess, some advantages or some strategies for those of us who might not be traveling as often as you, through social media to have access to some of these global citizen ideals?
Specifically that's a great question. I think some of it is doing some searching. There are great companies around the world that are everyone has a social media presence now. Mm. So like CloudGate from Taiwan, is going through a big transition right now in their artistic leadership. The founder is now retired and the new person's coming in. And there was discussion that he was going to retire all the great, great works of CloudGate with him, and a whole new voice is going to emerge. And I'm hoping that they do something different, but they're posting a lot right now. I've been seeing it on Facebook and a little bit of Instagram as I learn my skills in Instagram. As they're posting images and reviews and what videos there are of these things, I think that you can go out there and search for social media threads that are of topic interests, about women's rights in the arts in Egypt, around the world, whatever the country. And you're going to find these topics because they're all putting it out there. And it's just really interesting to see people coming together on an international level to help each other and find ways to help each other. It's complicated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's important in my mind that we approach all of this with a non-judgmental aspect. Mm-hmm. What we have here is great, but it doesn't necessarily apply to the culture in Argentina or in, Egypt. When I first brought Hervé Kobi from France, Hervé was telling us, almost everyone in his company is from Algeria. And that when his father was dying, he was talking to his father, and the father was telling him that he was talking about his Algerian ancestry, mm-hmm. which Hervé had just been learning. He's very, very French. So he went to Algeria to explore his roots culturally. And in the process, decided to do a dance company project and did an audition. And in the audition, there were 200 people that showed up, and 199 of them were men and one woman. And it wasn't that women weren't interested, but there are no dance studios in this country. At least that's what they were telling us at the time that he did this. And it was not allowed. So all these men that were, women just couldn't come out and try out for it. So I think the women, I know he's doing some project with women now. I'm curious, in the new work that has women, if they're coming from France or if they're coming from Algeria, or have they left Algeria and moved out. All these men were trained, for the most part, on the streets. They were all street dancers. Mm. So he's a classically trained artist who's working with street dancers in a classical structure on stage, but using their street language, movement language. So it was really interesting work. And I just thought, one of the things I liked also when I brought them the first time mm-hmm. was the men were very gentle and caressing and caring to mm-hmm. each other. It had nothing in the world to do with sexuality. This is about their culture. The Muslim culture, men are much more affectionate towards each other as a culture than we are in America. And we look at that and often put an American aesthetic on it that this is about sex. And it isn't. This is about brotherhood. And I thought that was very interesting. So I loved that he brought that piece of culture into our theater so that people could experience it.
And I feel like, yeah, you've done such just a wonderful job of, bringing these different cultures and different voices really to North Texas. And I'm curious too about how do you think that's being received in North Texas? Been really, really different types of works that you've done.
I think for the most part, people love it. People come to TITAS because they want to see something new and different. Of course, they're coming to see dance. And I think once people come and they sort of get over the fear that, I'm supposed to know something, then you just experience it. Just have a good time. Every now and then I get hate mail. I got hate mail once for, I brought, who was it? Lyon Opera Ballet a long time ago. And they were bringing a piece on an homage to great female choreographers of Europe. So I loved it. It was about female voice. Well, Maggie Marin from France did a piece called Grossland, which is about, they're like boteros. They're like all the dancers are in these giant fat suits. They're all in these rubber, like the Botero paintings and sculptures. And it was incredibly beautiful. It was comical to some degree, but it was really hard. They're doing hard ballet work in a very contemporary way. And it was charming and wonderful. And this woman was upset that we were making fun of people that are overweight. And I said, well, I appreciate your comment. I always respond to hate mail. And I said, but I have to disagree. I think she was celebrating the beauty of dance in all sizes. And then she wanted a refund. I said, well, did you leave? She said, oh no, I stayed to the end. Well, you go to a movie, you don't get a refund if you don't like it. I said that was part of the experience. If she had been offended and left immediately, then I would have offered her a ticket to something else. I had someone, a gentleman take offense from a religious perspective to Julia Boca's Boca Tango. It was the history of tango, and tango started in the brothels, and they were danced between men. Again, it had nothing to do with sexuality. It had to do with the circumstances. They were at the time. It was sort of a long story, but it had nothing to do with sexuality. First of all, they were in a brothel, so they weren't there for each other. They were there for these women. And so it was just, this is the history. It's just a history lesson. It wasn't a gay straight thing. It was just the history. And I just had to talk to him about it. And we had a really good conversation. He was open. I thought it was great that he expressed his concerns and he listened to my responses and he took it fine. He didn't, I thought that's great. That's the great kind of audience member. Expressed an opinion, listened to the response and he goes, oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying. And, if he had been really offended, I would have talked about, can I offer you a ticket to something else? But those are great, important. Everyone wants the compliments, but you only really grow from the criticism. The criticism is what really helps you, examine what you're doing, examine this was a mistake or this was the right thing to do, or it gives you an opportunity to really justify the work that you're doing. So compliments are lovely. They're great to get. We all love them. But it's the criticism, constructive criticism, of course, but criticism is what makes you grow.
I think along those lines, so one of our missions, No Box Dance, is really to, connect the artist and the audience, specifically through the digital space, and really supporting this expanded worldview. And I think that's something that's happening specifically here in North Texas. And I'm just curious, you mentioned for people to follow on Instagram, like a hashtag or something and the like. Do you have recommendations for our audience of companies or people that you think would
are doing that kind of work? Oh, yeah, so I was going to say my knowledge of the hashtags, the hot hashtags, isn't good enough. But I will say people like Bondaloo from San Francisco. They're an aerial company. We did them in collaboration with the Dallas Arts District. On the side of the Hall Arts building, they go off the tallest buildings. They do their works off of bridges and mountains. They're super cool, and they're all over the world, more than almost anybody else. Momix, M-O-M-I-X, is another one. They're all over the world. They do a lot of social media takeovers. Diavolo is also doing a lot of media takeovers and a big Instagram presence. And they're about to do some serious global traveling. These are all great companies to follow. Back in the day, Cedar Lake was a great company that started in New York. It's now gone. But we did an installation with them, talking about out of the box sort of thinking. It was an installation, and we did it in Hammond Hall. And the audience, there were no seats. So you came into the room and you were in the piece. And there was stuff happening above you, behind you, around you, through you. And they encouraged everyone to use their cameras and take pictures and social media the hell out of it. And it was great to see people. But people had to, I found that my role in the performance, I introduced them and then we started, and I found that my role was more about giving permission. People didn't know what to do. So the minute I started walking around, then everybody started walking around. The minute I took out my camera and started clicking pictures and posting, everyone goes, oh, okay. And so we did 4 consecutive shows in a night. And then I realized with each show, I understood my role better, was to, be the puppet master. And, but it was cool. And it was so great to look at everyone's faces. They were so lit up by a new experience. Again, the live experience. It was cool that we were posting it, but you had to be in the room to experience it. So that's cool stuff. I've seen some very cool projects that have been going on, like with National Global Ballet Day, where people are, posting live rehearsals around the world. That's always fun to watch. To really see the athleticism, the true fitness of these dancers is always cool.
You are listening to Navox Dance.
Have you really seen any shifts, if you will, of how the audience of dance wants to consume and experience dance? I know briefly you mentioned the attention span being different in America than in, I think it was Asia.
Like in Asia, yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about. So I'm just curious, have you seen a shift in your time here at TITAS?
Well, I've seen that we have a pretty vibrant dance audience. The biggest challenge that we have is getting the word out. I think the biggest hurdles is that people have preconceived notions about dance and what it is. And I think shows like So You Think You Can Dance and Dancing with the Stars and whatever Jennifer Lopez's show is, they're actually helping us. Whatever your opinion is of those shows, like I can't stand Dancing with the Stars, but people love it. So I get it. What's important about them is they bring dance back into the living rooms of people. And it makes it much more accessible. And they're sort of watching and they go, I want to go see some of this. When we brought Diavolo the last time, we had a huge surge in audience. We had to add a show, an extra performance, because they'd all seen them on America's Got Talent. And it was a huge percentage of people, and they had never been to a TITAS show. And that's because of that. So we're finding those ways to connect with them. I'm paying more attention to America's Got Talent, who are the winning shows. I think the audience is growing, but it's a never ending battle. Just as soon as you get this really educated audience, people move, people, leave Dallas and they start their careers elsewhere, and you're in the process again. I'm hoping that our city starts to really take serious the reputation of our city as a cultural destination. It's not enough that we have good art here. We have to show it. We have to talk about it. We have to demonstrate it. So when our city officials are out in the mayor's conference or, these things that happen around the globe and Dallas is being represented, we can't just be about industry. We have to talk about the cool visual artists that we have working in the city, the really vibrant dance community, the arts district that is so fantastic. These need to be a part of our representatives talking about what's great about living in this city.
Do you have any spoilers of who's coming for the next season?
Well, I will say one, because it's the biggest, is Alvin Ailey is coming back.
Awesome.
I will tell you that there is, in the next season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different countries being represented in the season. There are 10 dance companies, but 6 different countries involved. So we'll announce in April.
In April. Okay, so stay tuned. April.
Stay tuned. It's a good season.
We're looking forward to it. So as we wrap up, we have what we call our Flash 4 portion, where we ask all of our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash. So we'll just go ahead and begin.
Flash 4.
So question number 1, if you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be? A book, a podcast, someone to follow, a website, blog, YouTube channel?
Well, I think our redesigned website that will come out this summer will certainly be one. I think Theater Jones is a great site for critical reading and what's going on in the arts world as a rule. They've just started a visual arts page. And stay tuned, but Dallas Morning News is launching their new digital presence at the end of the summer. And that should be good.
Great. Question 2, what was the first dance you saw?
God, that is hard to answer. I'm sure it was a ballet folklorico. I grew up in San Antonio. I'm Mexican-American. It would have been a ballet folklorico, probably in Mexico with my family.
Question 3. Do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
People need to realize there's nothing private about social media. There's nothing private about Facebook. So post away, but be smart, because it can make your career and it can end your career.
That's great advice. Question 4. What is your favorite social media platform?
Well, I'm old, so Facebook I use the most. I'm trying to tweet more, and I'm trying to do Instagram more. After that, my head will explode. But I do Facebook a lot because it's just easy and it can be funny. A lot of my postings will be, especially when I travel, a lot of what's going on. And then you can always tell when I'm stuck in an airport bored, because then I'll be posting, dog and cat videos and something, hilariously funny that somebody wrote, or interesting, or some piece of nature that was cool. But I use Facebook a lot, but my intention is going to be on Instagram in the coming months.
Yeah, what are your social handles and the TITAS social handles?
Well, it's Santos TITAS is my Twitter handle, and that's where most of it's going through. And of course, Charles Santos and TITAS Presents on Facebook. And then it's all going through there. The Instagram account is there, but we're barely using it. I have the one that's under my name, but that's what this person is going to be doing when we hire them this summer, is to focus on Instagram and Snapchat and all the others and try to bolster that. But I'm Santos TITAS on Twitter, and I'm Charles Santos on Facebook.
And your website
is TITAS, TITAS.org. And then we're also on the attpac.org website /TITAS, because they do our ticket sales. But we post everything on our Facebook. Our website first.
Well, wonderful. So make sure to follow TITAS and Charles on social media and check out their website. Thanks again, Charles, so much for your time.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.